So I would like to welcome all of you to today's episode of What's Up Startup by Entrepreneurship Cell of Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute of Management. Today with us we have our guest Ms. Roma Priya, the founder of Burgle, who has been working with the startups and helping them in all the legal matters since the past decade. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Ashish. How are you?
Hi, ma'am. Starting with that, I would like to congratulate you and your firm on winning the top on the league table of venture intelligence table as a top private equity advisor. And in the last year, you managed to you were a part of more than 100 deals in 2020. So how was the year for you?
I think, like you mentioned, I think just like anybody else, we were also, taken aback by what happened last year. I think obviously all of us went through our own way, in our own way, a little bit of uncertainty as to how the year will pan out. But, thankfully for not just us, but for the entire startup ecosystem, we saw that there was continued interest from investors. And it gave a lot of reassurance to founders who are starting businesses or who have already started their businesses that, you know, and I think one of the reasons that happened is because many of these businesses tend to be technology driven and internet driven, and they're not necessarily dependent on an offline channel. And though some startups and some companies did take a hit, but to a large extent, we've seen that people innovated, they got creative, some of them pivoted their business model, lots of them raised capital, lots of them started new ventures. So I think overall, despite all the uncertainty that COVID brought, it was still a positive year for the startup ecosystem. And for Virgin, I think it was a very, very, positive year. We have grown substantially. We added and recruited new team members during this period. Like you said, we've closed close to 100 transactions last year, which is absolutely unbelievable even to us.
What is Bergen and how? What is the main function that you help entrepreneurs with?
So we are a law firm, we're a boutique law firm, and we primarily work with startups. Now the startup could be a very early stage startup, it could be a scale startup, it could be a startup which has raised multiple rounds of funding. And we also represent venture capital investors. So we pretty much focus on the startup ecosystem as our target market, right? And when I started the firm, I really felt that India is in the nascent stages of what will be one of the premium hubs in the world, in terms of startups. And I think that we are still in very early stages. So I really thought that building out a boutique practice which focuses on a market that is most likely to grow substantially and also change the way we live is the place we'd like to operate in. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Ma'am, as startups are a very high class risk asset for the investors. So,
Correct. Yeah.
so, so does it make it difficult to help with startups and in their processes?
So I don't think startup being a high risk category asset class makes it difficult to support them. But does it make it difficult for investors to decide whether to invest in them? Of course, right? But I think you have to look at what kind of investors invest in startups, right? So I think there is an overall understanding amongst all classes of investors who invest in startups, whether you're an angel investor or a fund, that it is a high risk asset, but which can give you a multifold return, which is not likely to be given in any of the secured assets, right? So I think it's a high risk, high return avenue, right? And I think everybody who invests in startups or who works with startups does understand that, right? As one of the underlying factors that not all companies will be successful, not all founders will build unicorns, and not everybody will have an exit. But will it make our world a better place? Most definitely yes, right? You are like, you can walk on the street and without with your phone, just call an app and you can transfer money anywhere in the world within seconds, and video call and speak to people. So what has led to all of this, right? It has Innovation has led to all of this. So whether those companies succeed or not, they will stretch the boundaries of the world we know today. And I think that's an overall good scenario, right? It'll stretch our imagination, and also um, also I think so many investors have made substantial capital out of investment in startups. But of course every investment does not succeed, and anybody who invests in startups or supports startups understands that there is a certain percentage that will not survive the tide.
Okay. No, I was just reading about partners, retained interest, and ESOP pool analysis. So,
Yeah,
does it get so the terms sound very familiar, but they are very technical in nature. So, does
yeah.
it get difficult to help entrepreneurs who do not have a legal background in helping them in such areas?
So, not even 1% of the entrepreneurs that we interact with have any legal background. And right, that's not a precondition to starting a law firm, right? Sorry, starting a company. You don't need to have a legal degree, but you need to work with somebody who's your lawyer who speaks in your language. So, one of the things that we do at Virgin Law, which I really insist, is that we do not. We don't want to impress anybody with the foreignness of our legal jargon, right? You want to make law relatable, you want to speak in the language of the entrepreneur, you want to talk at his speed, and you want to give him a service that will fit the stage and size of his company, right? So you have to meet those criterias. If you want to be a startup lawyer, and I think founders also are very aware today, so they may not have the legal background, but they have the support of all their the ecosystem, their friends, their ex alums from college, ex colleagues who have started businesses. So they do get a lot of knowledge and double check things from their network. And I think that you know I think these things look and maybe sound technical, but they are not really rocket science. And if you actually look at a founder or founders trying to do something that typically is a lot more difficult than this. So I think if you find someone who can explain it to you in simple English and not complicate things, I think we've not seen many startup founders having difficulty in understanding what we're trying to tell them.
I'm also with every legal there is a legal fee, big legal fee charges and retainer bills for the companies. So how Bergen law helps the startups in that way?
So Virgin is I think we when we decided that we are going to invest our time and resources to build a practice for the startup market, you obviously had to look at the fee that you can charge and the fee that you can't charge, right? So I think it's a different kind of place. So we basically, even if you look at our tagline, it says partner in growth. So we basically come in super early in companies. Many times the founder is just getting started or raising his first round of capital, and then we go on to support these companies as they grow, as they scale, right? So it's a long term investment from our side as well. And I think what we try to do as a firm is try and be transparent, try and offer a capped fee wherever possible, where the scope is clear, try and be very cost effective and economical, without compromising on the service, of course. And I think that it has worked in our favor, because we have worked with so many companies, because somewhere we have arrived at a mechanism to support them which doesn't pinch them in terms of the resources that they'll have to deploy to get the relevant service.
Okay. I was reading a report that every year, almost 36% of the startups wind up their businesses in the first 12
Yeah,
months of business because of
yeah.
legal reasons. So, what do you think, according to you, is the biggest reason for this?
I think, like you said, right, lack of awareness. I think founders, in fact, a lot of founders, and the exception are second-time founders or experienced founders, right? If you worked somewhere or founded your own company, you tend to be a little bit more aware about the legal implications. what kind of structure should you choose, what kind of licenses do you need for your business, what kind of minimum regulatory compliance that you need to maintain to operate a company, right? So if you are unaware about all these factors, then it becomes slightly difficult. And then if you don't reach out to uh, a startup lawyer or your ecosystem to get the relevant advice, I think it's just about a bandwidth issue, I feel, right? Because I think when you're getting started and you are trying to figure out what's your best business model, who will be your co-founder, who will be your customer, you typically don't have the mind space, I've seen, to also focus your attention in all legal aspects. But I strongly urge, I think, if you look at how much blood, sweat, and tears founders put in their business, I think it's a very small amount of time with very little time, effort, and capital. You can make sure that at least that is not the reason why your startup did not survive or did not manage to scale, or did not get the uh, most comfortable valuation or most aspirational valuation. But having said that, I don't think that startups fails for only legal reasons, right? There could be hurdles that come your way, there could be encumbrances, there could be roadblocks, but is there a way to restructure the company? Is there a way to solve the problem? Is there a way to resolve it? Is there a penalty that you can pay and fix it? Yes, there are. So I don't think that if you don't focus on law at all, and I am not one of those lawyers who give this kind of notion that nothing can be fixed later. Of course, it's 100 times easier if you fix it from the get go and you keep a track of all these things. But if you didn't, it doesn't mean that your business is a failure, right? Because if the business and the proof of concept is there and what you're building has value, then you will also find a partner or a law firm who will be able to help you navigate the issues that have cropped up because of lack of attention or awareness, and solve for those issues.
That's very interesting, ma'am. Uh, Ma'am, as you being a third generation lawyer and helping startups for almost a decade, how do you see that? What is your advice to entrepreneurs on the to structure a company, or to how to find the perfect law structure for their company?
I think the perfect law structure is very easy. It's not something that you have to deliberate upon. If you are building a company which you want to scale and raise external capital, you have to set it up as a private limited company, and it's a big full stop after that, right? So there is no other option available. However, if you're an entrepreneur who has other aspirations, you want to start a consulting business, you don't want to raise capital, then you could consider between a sole proprietorship or an LLP. It really depends on what kind of business. But I'm saying a typical tech founder, typical early stage founder is somebody who's building a company to scale, to raise external capital. You have to set it up as a private limited company. I think having obviously my family has been in the legal fraternity for a long time. You mentioned that I'm a third generation lawyer, so I think some things come inherently. But my family was also primarily in litigation, civil litigation, right? So I have many family members who are lawyers, but most of them don't know anything about venture capital, and I don't know as much about litigation, right? So it's not I think this entire ecosystem is so new. It's 10-15 years old in India, where everybody has gotten exposure and learned about capital raised through venture capital. And I think everything has happened so quickly that all of us who've been a part of the ecosystem have learned along the way. So I think more than what I learned through family, I think maybe I learned a little bit of client handling, a little bit of, I don't know, maybe some inherent skills, but one has had to work on themselves every day, right?
Yeah, right. Ma'am, since your career started with a company called Sandal Corporation,
Yeah,
where you were helping companies only to raise money and through their processes. So
yeah,
at that time, startups were not even a word to normal people. People didn't knew that you could just go there and raise money.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
How
correct.
was the journey from there till now, where we have so many unicorns in India? Last year we only added nine. to the list. So
Yeah.
how has been the journey for the company, for the ecosystem?
I think like I said, it's changed the way we live. It's changed the way we literally do everything. If you literally scan your life and look at every hour, you'd be doing something that you didn't know of the last decade or didn't know you could do the last few years, right? So everything has changed around us, right? So I think we live in evidence of the fact that it has completely revolutionized our life. Whether I think for the better. A lot of people argue that technology is also causing them equal amount of distress. Maybe it's causing so I think everything around us has changed, and personally it's been a very enriching experience, right? Like you said, I think when I started doing this, it was 2010, 2011, and nobody knew startups. Nobody could understand why somebody will give you capital without an asset mortgage or a pledge of some other security that you have, and how is this high risk investment feasible and things like that. At least in India, people were not aware. And I think today you see there are so many in people who are doing angel investment. Even they have regular jobs, but they'd like to support the ecosystem and innovation, and also invest in startups. So I think it looks like we are on the right path. It looks like, I think, I'm very impressed every time I go. And you are from a college and you reached out, and one of the reasons I said yes is that I really want to promote entrepreneurship, right? I think it's one of the things that I strongly relate to, feel for, and it's my heart goes out when I interact with the founder, right? Because I think it's so much of it's so much, right? Like, I think to be a founder and to take, like, it's so, to me it's so much easier to be an employee than to be a founder, whether you run a small business or a big business, or I don't know, like it could be any size, but it takes a lot to be a founder. It takes a lot to trust yourself so much to say that, okay, I'm going to build this, I'm going to try. Even if you fail, I think it means so much. And I think, when I go and talk to college students, and when I do these workshops, and I've done so many of them over the years, I really see that it's amazing to see. You should just ask a group of college students, who wants to be an entrepreneur and who wants to be an employee, and that ratio has changed radically. Right now you will see that it could be a 50-50 ratio, that there's so many people who are getting out of law schools. And and I think one encumbrance there is the student loan. The moment somebody figures a way to solve for that, I think a lot of people will jump in earlier into entrepreneurship than they typically do, right? But I think the ratio is changing by the day. You're seeing people get innovative, and that will just result in more job creation, more innovation, and I think it can result in such beautiful things. And if the last 10 years is any evidence of to show how much life can change in a decade, I don't know what to expect in the next 10 years, right?
Yeah, right, ma'am. I agree with you, a lot of your points that uh, so ma'am, uh, one of the reasons that what are one of the reasons that you started with Bergen Law and not stayed at the corporation that you were working with, and how was the journey of making the team that you had today?
So I think, I left my previous, I don't know, many people don't know this about me, but I left my previous law firm not to start another law firm. I had left because I was just interacting with entrepreneurs all the time. My sister used to run a juicing business, and I had actually left to start a model of the juicing business with her and franchise her existing juicing business. And that is what I had left to do. And I used to take up like these projects that would come my way because I had worked in the startup ecosystem for 5 years. So I was very much in love with entrepreneurship and very passionate to start my own company. I did not know at that time that I will end up building Virgin Law. And I had no clue, right? So I used to take up these projects, and it so happened that my sister relocated to Bombay, and the project that we were planning to never took off. And the side business that I had of serving entrepreneurs who came, just without me even realizing it, just there were people who were reaching out, and it was getting too much, so I had to hire a few resources to get work done and all of that. And I think 6-8 months down the process of me picking up work and working as a freelancer, I realized that this doesn't look like something that happens very easily. So let me build a company on top of it. So I actually incorporated Virgin in somewhere around October of 2015, but I was working um, as a freelancer maybe from April or May of 2015. And I think I think what that did is that I didn't have any pressure of um, starting out and all of that, like all the things that make you scared of starting out as a founder, right? Like, what will I do, where will I get the client from? Because I didn't even know, but this business was getting built, and we were getting a lineup of clients. When I was looking at it as just something that I was doing in the time being, right? So I think it relieved me of a lot of stress of starting a business, and anticipating and figuring out. But what I've realized is that entrepreneurship doesn't work like that. Like, I did not know where I will be in 5 years, and I think you can have the best plans and biggest strategies and everything planned out, but things don't work like that sometimes. And sometimes things, in my case, has worked out better than expected, right? So what I focused on really is to give my best to every entrepreneur, to every client we onboarded, to every deal, to every small thing, to try and do it better, to try and handhold more, to try and be more relatable to the founder or to the client who is working with us, right? And I think culturally I wanted to build. When I started realizing that this seems like this has feet, I started wanting to build something that culturally is different, as compared to law firms that I had known or seen. I wanted to build an open space for innovation. I wanted to build a space where people are free to speak their minds, people work together, very much like how any other startup would work, right? Where you're open to ideas and you don't work by just hierarchy. And I think, as I started moving along, we started finding people um, who, what we say, are lawyers but with an entrepreneurial mindset, right? So they are not people who are just happy to sit behind a laptop and just thrash out some documents and redline them, but they're also people who are entrepreneurially built, who like and are interested in businesses. And I think those are one of the biggest factors that I also look at when we are hiring a legal resource. Though I am hiring for a lawyer's position, but I honestly want somebody who looks at themselves from a purview that's a little bit bigger than I have a legal degree and I want a job at a law firm, right? I think you have to be motivated, interested, and passionate about what you're doing for you to do it better. And we've kept that notion, and we've had amazing team members. We've had team members who've been around, some of them very from a long while, and I think they've been our pillars of strength. They've been the reason why we've been able to do 100 transactions. I can't do 100 transactions myself. If I were doing it myself, I would have done maybe 10 or 15, right? It's them who have worked hard, who have been very much very much tied with our culture, with what our organization stands for, and have basically led these projects with just as much dedication, for it to and I think, I always say this, that you do one bad deal or one bad transaction and it takes away so many years of goodwill and hard work from not just you but every other person who's working so hard, right? So I think in my own way I try and motivate them, but I think they've been amazing. My team is my biggest strength, and my closest family many times. Yeah.
That's very, very motivating, ma'am, and I think that would be a lot simple for people to understand that people have to take a leap of faith and have to trust people outside of them to
Yeah,
build a culture
absolutely.
around an organization.
Absolutely. So,
Ma'am, I would like to.
have solo stars, don't build companies out, right? If you, at least in my view, and that's my personal view, that when you want to build something, it has to be bigger than you, it has to be bigger than me, and it has to be bigger than the purpose has to be the reason. And everybody who comes along, you have to trust them, you have to rely on them, and everybody has good and bad experiences, but and I think, go by your instinct, right? I think you can never know everything. Not everybody is, I have no business degree. It takes a lot more than just knowing law to run a law firm, but you do your best and you try to learn every day from everyone around you, and you try and focus. That's it.
What, according to you, is that one big thing that you are optimistic about in the business ecosystem that would change the next decade?
One big thing, I think. I think it's de facto technology, right? I think in what form will it be, we don't know as yet. But I think in the next decade, you will see a lot of transformation in healthcare, which I am personally very much hopeful and optimistic about. I think, I hope someday healthcare can be preemptive and not post facto. So I'm really hoping to see healthcare innovation, and I think the next few decades may radically change the way, how you know how effective treatments are for some diseases who we know today can't be treated. Or maybe there are ways to, and there's a lot of study and research going around this, but there are ways to prevent certain diseases that maybe you are genetically inclined towards, or maybe you can find out way before so that you can take those steps. So I think I'm very bullish on the healthcare tech market. I really think that a lot of other things are obvious, but I don't know where healthcare technology will lead us. But I really think that there may be many things that we can prevent, and I think world will be a better place and a happier place and a healthier place if that happens.
Yes, ma'am, I would agree that today healthcare is beyond hospitals today, and it's leading in the tech space. Ma'am, I would
Yeah.
also like to ask you that one thing that you are pessimistic about.
One thing that I'm pessimistic about, in what? In the startup space.
Yes, ma'am.
Inherently, I'm an optimistic person. I don't have an answer. I don't think that there is anything that I can pinpoint and say I'm pessimistic about. I'd like to be hopeful about everything.
So, ma'am, what would be your one advice to people on change that we have seen that pandemic has taught us that we can endure and adapt to change?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, ma'am, what would be your advice that how you at Burgeon uh, let that change, and how was the change from a normal, a non-tech background to that everything is building on a tech space today?
So I think, like everybody else, we learned that change is inevitable, and adaptability is second to human nature, right? So I think all of us figured ways of not just surviving the pandemic, but also looking at it as an opportunity. At Burgeon, I can tell you, so I did a few things. So I think moving to online meetings and those things, I think everybody did. But we realized that I think training and getting new people onboarded is tougher, right? When you are working remotely, they don't see the culture, they don't get to meet people physically. There is still a whole lot of physical environment comfort required when you onboard a new resource. So we created an entire induction program, wherein not just the training but also interaction with one-on-one interaction with each team member was promoted, arranged, and things like that, right? So I think at every stages, whether it is induction, whether it was at training, because I was saving so much time, because zooming in and out of meetings is a lot easier than going in and out of meetings, right? So you, if you go to one meeting and you're in Delhi and you go to Gurgaon, you waste or utilize 3-4 hours of your time. But if you're doing Zoom meetings, then it's a lot faster, right? So I invest a lot of my time re-looking at things, saying, okay, this is how we do this till now, but is there a better way to do this? What can we do more? How can we increase the client experience more? And took that time as an opportunity for me to look at the way we were serving, what could we have done better, right? And I think just just being present every day and saying that, okay, this is how it's going to be, and it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. So how to make the best use of the opportunity that the world has given us, right, instead of like looking at it in any other way.
As a legal firm, you cannot advertise to the outer world. So how is that a positive or a negative company?
I think, we've always known this. We grew up knowing this, so we've not looked at it as a positive or a negative. But I really think, client servicing doesn't work in the same way as buying a product or any other service, right? So I think it's a lot of comfort required. So I think, I don't know whether, I would say that it would have been better if we could advertise. I think there is a lot of things people can still do. You can do informative marketing. You can promote yourself in various ways other than just putting your logo in places, right? Nobody's stopping you to share something informative. Nobody's stopping you to, associate yourself with the right kind of, projects, associate yourself with the right kind of panels or speak about your firm and things like that. I think, I personally don't think that advertisement and just being able to publish in print media with your logo on top would change the way your business operates.
Okay, that's very interesting, and uh, I would like to conclude that the interview has been is that learn about the legal and how you transform a company on a legal basis, and why looking outwards at helping other people is also a great initiative. And I would like to conclude on the on your one advice to a 21-year-old that wants to start something new.
21-year-old. Yeah, so today you see 21-year-old founders as well. 10 years back you never saw that. That's one change. You asked me to tell you a change, right? Yeah. So I think, it's a difficult thing, because I think, with exposure and things like that, obviously people are starting things very early. But of course, there is a factor of maturity that comes with age. And if I could tell anybody, including myself, when I was 21, is to, just be aware, be open to opportunities that come your way. um, think, and respect yourself, trust yourself. Entrepreneurship is a long journey. Things don't always work out the way you have envisioned. While it's good to be optimistic, but be realistic, and know that, irrespective of how your first company does, you are still a rock star for starting out at 21, right? So it doesn't matter, the consequence doesn't matter, right, of what you're looking to do. So anybody who's looking to start a business at 21, I would say kudos to your courage. Trust yourself. Lead. Try and get yourself informed as much as possible about all aspects that will come your way, and just enjoy the journey. Like, it's amazing that you're doing something like this, and irrespective of how the journey, where it takes you and what happens with the business. Not everybody is a Mark Zuckerberg, remember that. And I think, just enjoy the entire process. And irrespective of what happens, there's something that you will positively gain out of this experience that you couldn't have if you took up your first job.
That's very interesting, ma'am. Ma'am, here we have a small kind of rapid fire for you that where would we give you a term or a word, and you would have to tell whatever comes to your mind at first, and or explain what your opinion is on this. So,
Okay.
ma'am, the first one is risk.
Entrepreneurship. It's a risk. Yeah. Yeah.
Ma'am, time management.
Productivity. It's the most essential, most expensive resource you have. Time.
Ma'am, make in India.
Absolutely supportive.
Ma'am, legal literacy in India.
Legal literacy in India, overrated.
Funding.
Required. and
Uh,
positive.
Ma'am, the latest Future Group lawsuit.
Latest season of sorry,
Ma'am, Future Group lawsuit.
future group lawsuit. No comments.
Ma'am, the WhatsApp policy update.
WhatsApp policy update. Also, I think it's not a one word rapid fire question.
Uh, Thank you. And I
Thank
would
you.
like to say that what is that one quote that you would that inspires you every day?
What is that one quote that inspires me every day? Mm, I don't know if it's a quote, but I can tell you what I think, right? I think, and I think it's just about perspective. But I really think that if you can look at your life from a lens of what you have instead of what you don't have, right? You'll just be 100 times more effective, 100 times more productive, 100 times better at anything that you do, right? So I think this is something that I remind myself every day, that gratitude is very important. That's a principle I live with, not a quote that I live with. That gratitude is very important. You got to be happy in the present, not when this happens, not when your company gets funded, not when you get XYZ awards, not when this will happen, not when you buy your first Merc. It cannot be like that. Life is not like that. So live in gratitude, be happy for where you are today, and enjoy today.
Uh, yeah, that's very interesting, and thank you, ma'am, for the interview. It has been a
Yeah.
great experience on
I must
learning
tell
from you.
you that I think you came up with a lot of very interesting questions, right? A lot of people, a lot of interviews that I do. I think you as I'm assuming you're also a college student, right? I think you could
Yes,
pursue a
ma'am.
career in media, maybe. No, but I think you've done a good job with the interview. Best of luck. I really hope that in some ways I am able to inspire your college students to also pursue entrepreneurship and take uh, that big leap of faith in themselves. And in any way that if I can support your initiative, we'll be happy to. Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, bye.